Hello YouTube buddies and welcome to this week's video. Now, as some of you may know, I am currently in the process of writing and illustrating my first children's book, and to keep the hype about that going a little bit, I thought I'd show you some of the tools that I'm using to make my children's book. Now bear in mind, I am not sponsored by any of them. These are just materials that I've found recommended by other people, or I've found through trial and error to be really good, and these aren't the digital tools that I'm going to be using. These are just the analog tools, so the paints, the brushes, the pens, the paper, stuff like that. So if you're interested in that kind of video, keep watching because that's what you're going to get. Okay, first things first, I'm going to start with the sketching process because you're going to need somewhere to put all of your ideas down, and this is just a regular sketchbook, no particularly nice paper in here. This one is full of cartridge paper, but I do have some which just use like general kind of office paper type paper. Whatever it is, make sure you're not too precious about it. This is going to be somewhere where you're going to be making mistakes, throwing ideas down, and generally in no way is going to be a finished piece. Okay? So to start off this sketchbook, to make it not very precious, I colour blocked some pages. I didn't know what I was going to do with them when I very first started it, but I just made something up as I went along, and I did some self-portraits here. You might recognise this one from my avatar. And I made some mistakes. I made a mistake on my eye there, decided to turn it into a lemon. Why not? This is your place where you make the mistakes. So I started off just doing some general pen work, getting your eye in, exploring stuff. And then I began practicing some figures. What I found quite useful when I was starting this book is not to imagine what my book was going to be like. It was putting myself into the position of an illustrator or writer that I already knew and pretending what it was like to be that person. So these pictures here are my versions of Axel Scheffler's people from the book The Snail and the Whale. Now, I don't draw like this. This was me kind of trying to stand into his shoes. I'm in no way trying to copy Axel Scheffler or be him. I just wanted to get a feel of what it was like to be a successful illustrator who had, you know, books with their illustrations in it. So that's what this is. And what it did, it was a really good way of just stepping into someone else's shoes, taking the pressure off me for a second and making me someone else in my head just for half an hour. And it's amazing how much freedom that gives you. So like I say, disclaimer, I am not copying Axel Scheffler, I just really admire his work. So to take 5 minutes out, not 5 minutes, I probably took half an hour, and step away from all the worries that I had about my own work and just stepped into the life of an already successful illustrator gave me so much headspace to work out what I liked and what I wanted. So that's something that I've got from other artists. In no way is this me saying you copy. Copying someone else's work is completely wrong, and I do not agree with that. So then I started throwing down some ideas for my pages. At this point I'd already had the words written down. That was in another sketchbook. This is just all about the art side of it. And you can see from this bit here, I've got notes on what I liked and what I didn't like about the page. So then I go on to the next bit, try again, to the next bit, try again. These are all parts of the same page, using elements that I liked and disliked and moved them away or added them on as I saw fit. So, to give myself a break from just doing the book, I worked on character development in this sketchbook as well. So, as you may know, my book is about cats. So I took some pictures off the internet and I tried to cartoonify them in my style. Some of them worked, some of them not so much, but that's what this sketchbook was about. It's just a rough and ready sketchbook. Character develop of my main character, or one of my main characters, getting different photos, different situations, and turning them into a recognisable character in different in different angles. So trying my best to get a bit of consistency. Sometimes it didn't work. Mistakes are fine, doesn't really matter. Here's another one of my main characters in lots of different facial angles and positions, different ideas. Here's another page where I went through pictures of men wearing hats on the internet and cartoonified them in my style, again with old ladies. And that really helped when I was working on other figures later in the book. So yeah, that's just more of the same, cartoonifying people off the internet. As for the paper I've been using for my final pieces, I've been using this jumbo pack of Daler Rowney watercolour paper, and this is the smooth paper. I know some people like the textured paper, but because I'm going to be doing mine as a picture book, I wanted the least amount of texture there as possible, so when I'm scanning it you see the images, not the texture of the paper. And I've got A3, it's bigger, you've got a bigger space to work with, you can make your characters bigger, you can either do one page per sheet or split it between 2 pages per sheet. So I've been very happy with that. There are other watercolour papers out there, and I'm sure there'll be some people who use different things. You can get watercolour sketch pads, so like this, but with watercolour paper in them, that's fine too. I just found this as a really good deal and worked really well for me for the sizes that I needed and the quality that I needed as well. Something else that I use is tracing paper or layout paper, and that's good, not for copying other people's work. As I said, that is wrong, we do not do that. But if you've made an error on a page, so for instance in the video, not last week but week before, I showed you a page that went wrong. I added too much water because my desk was hot and everything was drying up. The page buckled, it just all went wrong. I had to have a way of getting my inked in picture off one piece of watercolour paper onto another. So what I did there, I put my tracing paper over it, I traced my image on the other side, drew around that image in a soft pencil, and then on a fresh piece of watercolour paper I put it back down and I rubbed over it, and it transferred that pencil image onto my watercolour paper, meaning I could go back over it in my pen, rub out the pencil, and I was good to go. I think people get a little bit concerned about the idea of tracing when they're doing art. Now, if it's your own work that you're tracing, for me, there's nothing wrong with it. Go for it. Pencils. I'm very specific when it comes to pencils. I tend to stick to 2H, 4H, and then their matching partners on the bold side, which is 2B and 4B. You can see how much I use them because this is the size of a regular pencil. It's been sharpened a little bit. I use these a lot. The reason I like these pencils is because as long as you're light with using a 2H or a 4H, as long as you don't push and indent on the paper, these rub out without a trace, usually. But if you're very light with it, you can rub these out and no one is ever the wiser. Alternately, if you are using 2B and 4B, these are really good for if you're using, for instance, tracing paper, and if you use a B pencil to trace the image on the flip side of your tracing paper, the one that's going to produce the image, it leaves a lot of lead, a lot of graphite on the paper, so you can see what you're tracing over when you come to use your pens. But these are my pencils of choice. Obviously there's different brands. I use Derwent because I'm a Lake District girl, but whatever floats your boat. But in terms of the actual pencils, 2H, 4H are probably the most useful pencils that I use. Next, pens. Again, I am not sponsored in any way, but I find that the Rotring Isograph pens are fantastic. You can get them in a range of sizes. I've only got 2 different sizes. I'll show you why I bought these sizes. Right, I used to use, 1 second while I come into the camera. I used to use these, and I've still got lots of them left. They're in varying states of the end of their life status, so they don't last very long anymore. I used to use the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens, and I use these because they are waterproof ink, it does what it says. You put your pen down and you can put watercolour washes over the top and it doesn't smudge. I thought that was brilliant. Then I realised how many packs I was getting through. I mean, look at this. This isn't even all of the packs that I've had. I was getting through them at a rate of knots, and they're not refillable, guys. And I realised that the sizes that I was using were comparable to a 0.10 and a 0.30 in the Rotring isographs. That's the 0.10 and that's the 0.30. These bad boys are technical drawing pens, and a lot of architects use them, so I knew that buying these pens I was going to be getting something that was high quality and would do the job that I wanted it to do. The reason I went for this pen primarily is because it is refillable. So this little reservoir here, you can take that off. I won't do it because I don't want ink everywhere, and it is waterproofing, so I can't wash it off very easily. You take that off and you fill that up with your ink, and then you are good to go. The ink that I use on my Rotring Isograph pens is waterproof. You can buy it from them directly, but you don't have to use the Rotring ink. Ecoline! Okay, Ecoline. I love these watercolours. They have the vibrancy of an ink, but they are water soluble. Even once they've dried, it's just like a regular watercolour. You can go back over it. If you make a mistake, you can get a wet brush, a damp brush, brush over it, pat it out, and it comes out. But the vibrancy of these colours is amazing. This is a little colour swatch that I did when I first bought them. They're brilliant. They have the vibrancy of an ink without the graininess that I sometimes find with inky inks. Another good thing is that they are glass. And if I can show you without ripping my skin off, because I haven't used the yellow for a while so it's dry. So they have a little pipette on the top, which makes you feel like a wizard when you're using it. It feels like you're a wizard mixing up magic potions. Basically, they're worth it for that alone. Hello, this is Editing Emma, and I realised that I had completely forgotten to give you information about the type of brushes that I use. There's no point of having paints if I don't have brushes as well. So I'll tell you the sizes that I use, because the brands that I have don't really matter to me too much. It's the sizes that I want and the quality. So I suppose the brushes that I found at the moment are a good quality, but it doesn't mean that there aren't other qualities out there. I get my brushes from Jackson's Art, or I have done in the past, and the sizes that I use are size 6, size 2, and size 3/0, which is a really fine one for fine details. So altogether they look like this. And these are the Arctic Toray white synthetic brushes. So there we go, that was a little snippet into the process behind my children's book that I will be publishing at some point in 2020. Watch this space. I'm going to leave it there for now though, because I've rabbited on enough. If you've got any questions or suggestions about art materials, pop them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But until next week, I'm going to leave it there. So bye bye.